Okay, here we are, 24 hours of graph talks concluded now. And this is the question and answer closing session. I'm ABK, Andreas from Neo4j, and I'm here with my good friend, Emil Eifrem, also the CEO, right? And a founder of Neo4j.
Something like that, yes.
And he's going to answer some of your questions. There's a lot of good questions that have been lined up. We'll go through some of those. Before we get into that exactly, I'll just take you through a couple of slides to show what the mechanism is for how we're going to get any questions answered. So if you have questions, please add them to the list there or upvote any questions you see that you like the look of. So again, this is the closing Q&A session with Emil and Andreas. If you're not sure who's who, again, there's a good photo of both of us. The orange coffee mug is the key for me, of course. And here's how things work. So in the virtual conference panel that you've got there, on the left-hand side, there's a tab for the reception. You click on that first. You'll then see on the sidebar, there's an Ask Emil tab that's available there. Click on the Ask Emil tab, and then just type in a question or upvote a question that's already there. We may not get to all the questions during this live session now, but we will answer every question that is asked offline later on. Somebody will follow up and make sure that any questions you've had that you've offered to us, that we've offered you an answer. So that's the mechanisms of it. And now let's actually just get into the questions themselves. Emil, are you ready?
So ready.
My gosh, 24
Fired
hours,
up and ready to go.
Okay, good. That's the energy we need. Okay. This question's been waiting for a while, and I'm so glad that we're finally going to be getting to it. This is about you personally, about your life, Emil. Obviously, you were the founder and the CEO of Neo4j. If you weren't the CEO of Neo4j, what would you do? What would be your focus if there was an Emil clone? What do you think they would be doing right now?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I mean, it's hard to even think about it because I've been doing this for 15 plus years now.
Yeah.
It's such a core part of my identity, right? And so even thinking about it is actually very hard. And I guess playing out the counterfactual, like what would I have done if I didn't do this? Man, I guess I'll start off by saying it's like super unfair because I literally have the best job in the world. Like I'm just having a blast, right? And it's super tough and it's long hour and like all that kind of stuff, right? It's hard work, but just I'm just enjoying it a lot. Mm-hmm. So even thinking about doing anything else, if I weren't the CEO of Neo4j, I'd love to be the CEO, I guess, of another graph database company. I mean, it's just what we're doing is so damn cool, right? And so rewarding in so many ways that it's hard for me to even think about it. Also, I'm completely useless right now. This is the only thing I can do. We talked about this in our last session. I started out somewhat decent at writing code and was one of the first 2 kernel developers together with my co-founder Johan, and wrote the kernel, and then over time became decreasingly useful as a code contributor, over the years until now when I'm post-technical and can barely write code these days, right? And so I don't think I have an employable skill set, at this point. So I don't have a good answer to that question. I think after a while, when you start kind of running, when you run a company, I've never been infatuated with startups. I'm infatuated with our startup, like with Neo4j, right? But there's a certain skill set and a fascination towards with how to build and evolve a company like this. And so maybe the more relevant thing is I hope to be the CEO of this company for decades, right? Like I don't think of when should we have an exit, because exit means you're leaving something. And I think we have so very meaningful work ahead of us. But at some point, I'm not going to be the CEO of Neo4j, right? And then what would I do? I probably would be advising kind of younger startups and doing stuff like that, right? But the counterfactual of what I would have done without Neo4j, I can't even begin to think about.
It's really hard to explore.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that answer. That's great. And in some ways, even though you didn't your goal when this started wasn't to create a startup. It was an open source project first.
That's
It was
right.
just for love of the thing. You needed to do the thing, and then
That's right.
you were the right person at the right time with the right technology, and it carried forward.
And a bunch of luck and serendipity and all that kind of stuff. But that's exactly right. Like, we didn't start out sitting down like, hey, we want to build a company.
Right.
What should we do? No, we ran into the problem ourselves. We invented a solution to those problems. And then we very, very arrogantly thought, we really were arrogant about it. We said things like, the world deserves this. And stuff like that, right? When we invented the thing.
Yeah.
And we said, all right, like, now how can we get other people to enjoy the benefits of this? And our initial instinct was, let's donate it to the Apache Software Foundation, make it a top-level Apache project, and let's work as consultants, help people implementing it, right? That was our initial instinct. But then after a while, we realized, it took us a long time to get there, but like, wait, wrapping a company around the product is actually a really useful way of being able to resource it properly.
Right.
And building a database, that's not something you do kind of as a hobby. Like, that requires a lot of work. And, we're here in the Malmö office, the engineering HQ of Neo4j. We have over 200 engineers working full time on that database. Like, there's no way we could have pulled that off with just some Apache open source project, no company, and a bunch of just us working as consultants, right? And so after a while, we realized, okay, the smartest way of get this technology, this approach to data, into the hands of as many people as possible, the smartest way of doing that is to wrap a company around it. And so that's how we kind of talked our way into ultimately becoming startup founders. And then that's now what I'm a career CEO now, I guess.
Well, so let's actually take, there's two questions I want to follow up with. And the first, so thinking about, okay, now you've created a company. It's not just a company, you've created a new category of database. There's a new kind of database that there were versions of before, there's different variations of, but like there's now a graph database is a thing that it wasn't before. Now there's a whole category, right?
Yes, we've created that.
We've created
you,
well,
me,
yes,
the people here,
All the people
very
here.
much the people on this call.
That's right. That's right. And so this next question actually gets to, okay, so what's the, where does this go? Is the graph database going to be the new dominant form of database? And the exact, formulation here is like, do you think graph databases will eliminate relational databases and support the backends of most projects? So can we use a graph database for every business problem?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we touched on this in like maybe the last one or maybe the APAC. I don't remember which one of the previous Q&A sessions. And I guess I think of it in a couple of buckets, right? One bucket is if you have an existing application that is already backed by, let's call it a relational database, right? Do I see people en masse at large replacing that relational backend with a graph database with Neo4j? I don't. What I do see there is people running Neo4j side by side with that relational database for applications where they've accumulated a lot of connected data, of which there's an increasing amount. So more and more of those applications every year, right? And then you bring in Neo4j, you run it side by side with that relational backend, right? So that's not replacing it, that's not killing it, or whatever, however the question was framed. In that first bucket, which is existing applications already written on top of a relational database. I think the more interesting bucket is the greenfield projects. So you're kicking off something, you're starting from scratch, you're sitting down, you're going to solve some kind of problem with code, you write an application. As part of that, you're putting together a technology stack. What programming language should I use? What web framework? What XYZ? What cloud platform, right? And what database should I use? And most sophisticated, like most non-trivial applications, over the long arc of that application will use multiple database backends, not 5, not 7, not 10, but more than one. But you usually start out with one. You don't start out with 2 databases or 3 databases. And I think if we do things right at Neo4j and in the graph database world, I think the opportunity is for Neo4j to become that first database that people reach for. And what I encourage people to do on a in a previous Q&A session was you're all watching this from a browser. Hit Control-T or whatever, Command-T, pull up a new tab, go to images.google.com, and then you type in domain model, and you do a Google image search for domain model. And what you should see just about now on your browser screen should just be page after page of screenshots of people's domain models. Every single one of them is a graph. And that just tells you something about if we make the developer experience amazing, if we reduce the friction, the practical friction around how to go from that picture of the domain model, expressed maybe in a programming language, go from that into the database, right? If we reduce that friction, you can see just how an amazing fit graph databases are with most domains, right? And so that's the opportunity, which is, that's a 3 to 5 to 7 year out, type of time frame. It's not a 3-month out type frame. And so then for those greenfield new projects, I do think that we can not eliminate, I think that's maybe the phrasing of the question, but minimize and over time reduce the amount of time that people reach for a relational database as that first database.
Okay. Yeah, that makes great sense to me. And there's a sort of a counter way of thinking about this, or counter question to that, which is, so that's graphs versus relational. Okay, there's this graph database that is Neo4j, but it is now a category of graph databases. So this is a question kind of along the lines of that, which is, over in the relational world, here's what we've seen. Is there a way to avoid having multiple implementations of graphs with different tools like has occurred in the relational world? Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, variations on SQL, like how do we keep things sane in the graph database space?
Yeah.
Right?
Such an interesting question. I think we've seen time and time again in our industry, there's a tension between, let's call it centralization and kind of uniformity, right? We could also call it standardization on one hand, and decentralization and innovation on the other hand. And exactly finding that balance on that spectrum in different stages of evolution of a new category is very tricky. And so when we started out, let's the question was phrased around relational databases and SQL. So let's think about our query language, Cypher. When did we invent Cypher? 2012, 13?
It was early on.
Like,
2012-ish. That's right.
Something like that, right? And for the longest time, there were other graph vendors who came to us and said, you should open source Cypher. Like it's the best way. They would tell us this in private. It's the best way to query graphs that people have invented so far. People love the ASCII art. Here's how you draw a pattern of your graph. That type of a thing, right? And we resisted that. And my point of view was, no, it's too early. It has to be able to evolve fast. And forcing it to go in lockstep between all the different implementations out there would slow it down when it was in that elbow part of the S curve, where it's like there's a lot of innovation and exploration and figuring shit out type of a thing. Right? That changed in 2015. In 2015, I felt like, all right, we've figured out, not 100%, but maybe 80% of what the query language should look like. And that's when we said, you know what? We now encourage other graph database vendors to implement this. And so we were on stage in San Francisco, I want to say,
that's right,
at Graph Connect 2015, on stage with Oracle, a representative from Oracle. And we announced the birth of the Open Cypher project, which was us giving away Cypher for free to any other graph database vendor. It was actually a very counterintuitive thing. Like the internal discussion with some of my lovely colleagues in sales was some version of, when we're out and we're talking to customers, every single time, Cypher is amongst the top 3 reasons for why the customer prefers Neo4j versus other graph databases. It's not always the number 1, but it's always amongst the top 3. And you're giving that away to what's ultimately our competitors. Like, wait, dear Kami, hippie CEO from Sweden. Why are you doing this again, right? And our point of view was always, you know what? We've gotten to a point now where the core of the language is stable enough. Now a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And getting us to speak a unified language actually is better for the space. And I think our role, our job as the leader in the space, the biggest player in the space, is to open it up and to give away a little bit more and give to kind of our competitors. Because the bigger narrative here is not, do they choose Neo4j or some other graph database implementation? It is, are they using relationships in their data, right? Are they able to build applications really fast because they have a data model that fits really well with their domain model, right? Are they using relationships in their data to inform their predictive models? That's the broader narrative. And having a unified language for that, it just helps everyone in the space, right? That Open Cipher project in 2015 ultimately led to the birth of GQual. And GQual is a massive thing, right? This is the first time. This is the first time in 40 years that the database industry have said, you know what? There's going to be a sibling to SQL, right? If you recall, I'm taking us down in ancient history now, but like in the mid-90s, there was a rise of object databases, right? And there's like the surge of, and kind of the thought was that there's a bunch of object-oriented programming languages that came into vogue in the mid-90s. The relational model is a bad match for that. And so object databases will be the new thing. And they went to the SQL committee and they said, you know what, we want to standardize our query language. And the SQL committee said, nah, we're just going to incorporate some of your objecty stuff into SQL, right? And Oracle launched what they called an ORDBMS, an object relational database, right? Which is just Oracle with some, syntactic sugar sprayed in there, right? To get, and there's a little bit more. You could do some inheritance of tables, actually. Like, so there's some more substance features, but basically it just absorbed into it. Early 2000s, XML databases, same story. SQL committee said, nah, it's not distinct enough. It's not a category of its own. We'll just add some XML support to SQL. Early 2010s, document databases, Mongo, Couchbase, those folks went to the SQL committee and said, you should support JSON. And they said, yes, we will support JSON in SQL. So wave after wave of innovation in databases has always ended up with the SQL language absorbing those features into it, with exactly one exception, which is graphs, where they looked at what we're doing and they say, you know what? This is a distinct, valuable category in and of itself, and it deserves its own query language. And so that's GQual, based in large parts, but not exclusively, but in large parts on Open Cipher. And so if I add this all together, right, we've been, remember where I started out with the spectrum of like centralization and standardization over here, and then innovation and decentralization here. We're somewhere in the middle. But I think the built-in premise of the question is, hey, it would be so much better for the space if everyone is using exactly the same query language. And I disagree with that premise. I think moving the entire space all the way over to exactly here, where we're all forced to use exactly the same language, I think is still wrong, because there's a lot of innovation to be had still. And so having a somewhere a little bit outside of that, where all of us are using GQual as the basis, we're not beholden to only do exactly way to build features until it's been added to the GQual language, because the nature of standards, it's kind of the nature of democracy. It has to be kind of messy and slow moving and the least common denominator, right? And so that was probably a way longer answer than the question there intended. But there you have some of my thoughts.
But it's a fantastic answer. And like to your point then here at the end, like if the standard covers 80% of what you need to do, and leaving 20% for variations, that's enough for vendors to have a great common interplay and for an ecosystem to go around it, and like flourishing can happen, and then there's still variation and you can still grow and innovate. I love that. Okay. That was fantastic. And Long, I'm going to give you, for the first time in these 3 sessions, an easy one.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to give you an easy question. Okay, let me see if I can even find it. It was such an easy question. Oh, and it was, yeah. So we've heard a couple of sessions about Neo4j 5.
Yes.
When is Neo4j 5 going to be out?
Neo.js 5 has already been released. It was released and announced last week, actually. So it's already available. Go to neofj.com/download. I really encourage you to check it out because it's our biggest release in 3 years. And it has like such a breadth of features that like even flipping through the slide decks that describe all of them like takes you probably hours. I mean, it's just chock full of so much amazing stuff. So already available, neofj.com/download. Download, play around, have fun.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm going to zoom out then.
Yeah.
So this has been 24 hours of graph technology conversations, in-depth technical conversations, product conversations, a lot of things to learn. Kicked off with this amazing keynote from Nicholas, right?
Yeah.
Nicholas and his social networks have been part of humanity for thousands of years. It's a lot to absorb. We've got people who are new to graphs, people who are experienced with graphs. What's your expectations? Like, after all of this is, all of this truth and knowledge is offered out to the world, what do you expect people to like, take away from this?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess speaking only for myself, I suspect some people in the audience might feel the same. I look now at the schedule, and I looked at it ahead of it and just got massive FOMO, right? Like fear of missing out. It's just I want to duplicate myself. Is kind of to the first question. Like I want to duplicate myself. I want to be in all the sessions, right? And 24 hours of content times 3 sessions. Like the engagement has been amazing on Hopin, just questions and people introducing themselves and talking and all that kind of stuff, right? So I guess my first thing would be, hey, chill. I hope you've kind of drunk from the fire hose. Chill. All the sessions are recorded. They're going to be available almost immediately afterwards, right? Like so you can go and you can like rewatch the ones that you found particularly thoughtful, but even watch the ones that you weren't able to attend and see. I'm certainly going to do a lot of that. So that's kind of the first one. I think the second one is then this is you consuming and hearing and learning a lot of theory, but ultimately we're all practitioners in this conference. And this is not about seeing and learning and understanding. This is about doing. So my expectation and hope for all of you, thousands of you who have participated over these last 24 hours is, man, in your next project, you should base it on Neo.js 5, right? You should use AuraDB free, right? You should use AuraDB professional. You should use GDS. You should visualize your next data set in Boom. Start like getting your hands on this entire product suite is out there in between kind of open source download and cloud delivery. It's right at your fingertips. And it's freaking rocket science, quite literally kind of rocket science type power available for you. So don't just learn in theory, but actually get your hands dirty, start using it. And there's an amazing community, all of which you're a part of, that's available to help you out if you get stuck or if you have questions, anything in particular that you want to understand how to do or how to do better. There's a very thriving and vibrant community available, to ask. So that would be my hope and expectation from the people who have tuned into this.
Fantastic.
Session.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the 3 sessions we've had together. Thank you for the last 12 years. Looking forward to the next 12. And thank you to all of our speakers that we've had over the last 24 hours. All of your sessions, exactly as Emil has mentioned, they've been amazing. I think everybody has been just in awe of all of the content. The depth and the breadth of the content has been just truly outstanding. And for everybody who's tuned in, thank you for joining us. As Emil mentioned again, there's more to be had. Please join us out in the community. Come talk to us. We'd love to hear what your ideas are, what you've been inspired by, what your questions remain. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Take care.
Bye.